Come back out of the past and go with me over that bridge south of the bandstand to Fountain Island to feed the ducks on the northeast corner that they seem to prefer. Here we are today looking northeast off Fountain Island with the ducks. See the bridge over there? The ducks sure are tame because food is magic to them summer and winter. There were many ducks here years ago, but they knew enough to fly south in winter when this picture was taken of the old boat Nida in January 1918. She was owned by Frank Schultz, who ran the boat livery from 1915 to the middle 30s and was built by the Pope Boat Company in 1907. I remember watching Frank one cold day in December when an early freeze came and froze the ice before Frank got the boat out of water. That day he tried to saw the ice around the boat, but it was so cold that the ice refroze right behind the saw. So Frank gave up and left the boat like this. See the old wooden bridge over northeast, over the main channel? I have had many rides on that Nida when it was fashionable to pay 35 cents for about a half-hour ride on the lake. Now come back into the present day again and walk south on Fountain Island to the arch footbridge that goes over east to Oven Island. And let's walk up on the western end of that bridge about 8 feet and turn facing southwest towards the deer pen and the Vulcan plant. It's over there on Main Street behind the trees. Now facing this way from the top of an old boat right here in the summer of 1917, this picture was taken of the old boat sailing sloop Kilwinning. Matt Schiller was fixing up so he could take her to Florida by way of the Fox River, Portage Canal, down the Mississippi to the Gulf of Mexico. I'll never forget how I would wake up before dawn on 7th Street, ride my bike out to the park, and just as the sun's red and yellow rays began to light up the marsh, I would walk up on that little wooden pier, and the smell of bacon and eggs would come out of the boat's cabin like I never smelled before. But Matt never realized a dream because the Portage Canal was too shallow by then, so he gave up the trip, left the Kilwinning again to the elements, and went back to Madison. See the row of old boathouses over near Main Street? As the sun rose, the marsh began to fill with the songs of birds and the fragrance of lilies everywhere. Now again, come back into today with me and walk along the fence south of the fountain and look back southeast towards Kiesler Field. It's rather pretty looking along the fence and path on the south of that island. But when I took this picture from my skiff in the same spot in November 1921, there was no path, no fence, and no land right there because the little island was only about a third or one-fourth as large as Fountain Island is today. There is the old cabin launch Iris sinking in the marsh, and the muskrats are all snug in their grass houses for the winter. Now come back into the present time again and walk south towards the old steam locomotive and stop about 150 feet before reaching it and turn to look north. We are also about 100 feet east of Main Street. This is a nice picnic area protected from the strong winds that come off the lake. There is the new barn where the zoo petting animals keep warm in winter. I remember when I stood right here looking north on this same spot one cold winter day and took this picture of the human animals trying to have a good time and keep warm on that Sunday afternoon, January 8, 1922. We had to dress warm back in those days or freeze, because there was no place to warm up like there is in some places today. Now let's come back out of the past and into the present time and walk south of the old steam locomotive 2714 to the corner of Main Street and Harborview Drive. Then let's walk east on the drive towards Park Avenue, about a block or a little more. Then walk over south of it to find the old railroad right-of-way that also went east to Sheboygan. Yes, there are traces of it left, buried cinders and very rotten wood from the old railroad ties that stretch east from here as we look down the right-of-way. Now let us walk ahead on that old right-of-way to Allen Street. We are about halfway between Main and Park Avenue here, and about 40 feet south of Harborview Drive. Then let us turn and face northeast where we look over Harborview Drive. The lagoon over there, 150 feet away, the eastern part of Keesler Field, and the lighthouse beyond, behind the trees. Now today, as I stand here, it's hard for me to believe that I stood right here on the old railroad tracks many years ago and took this picture on a cold, dark, cloudy late afternoon, November 16th, 1921, facing the same way northeast over the big old marsh, at us kids skating around on the first ice of the coming winter. We were having a wonderful time skating and racing around the new muskrat houses that were scattered everywhere. There is the first ice boat of the season sailing back and forth from Main Street to Park Avenue. I remember the new ice was only 2 to 3 inches thick and crystal clear in places, and made us feel we were skating on open water because we could see the bottom weeds 6 to 9 feet below in places, as if there was no ice under us. It was scary. But let's wake up out of the past and go to Park Avenue and walk north to within 50 feet of the Park Avenue Bridge and look north. The bridge is on the left and the harbor is on the right. And many years earlier, facing the same way, I took this picture October 29th, 1921, looking north at the old bridge that was built in 1912, except it was about 75 feet north of the present one. Over on the other side towards the lake, that land was a tourist campsite then and ended just outside the right of the picture. Lighthouse Point had not been built yet, or thought about probably. Camping by car was very popular then, and some evenings there were as many as 70 camping parties out there. The cars were becoming quite reliable and the roads fairly good, even though they were not paved in summer. It was fun to walk through the city of tents and cars out there to see the car license plates from all over the country, from different states. But come, snap ourselves back into today, 1992, and walk straight north over the bridge to the breakwater at the lake and look west at the stones that have withstood the many storms through the years and the battering of ice in winter. Those stones were nice and level once on top, so we could ride our bicycles on them. Let's go back 64 years to 1928 to look at those stones where we rode our bicycle. Here we are. See how nice and level it was on top for our bike? There is the old free swimming school, as we kids used to call it, and look at the water under it. The bathhouse was first built over the water and that island, and later the breakwater was built ahead out in the lake on the sand bottom on both sides where the kids played. Yes, the parkland had been extended out in the lake 50 to 75 feet in places to straighten the shoreline. In one place, as much as 150 feet, I can remember. We are close to the main bridge, so let's walk over on it to have a look at the new stone pavilion that was built in 1974. This one is the third one built on that spot and the nicest one by far, but it cost $175,000. The first one was built in 1898. Now let's turn the clock back to have a look at that first pavilion as it was on October 28, 1921, over 71 years ago. It sheltered many a merry picnic party from the quick summer thunderstorms, as it did me once, when it blew so hard it carried dishes right over the railings. When I took this picture, I was standing on the old wooden bridge. See the wooden railings and the wooden planks the cars drove over on to go over the main channel? Fond du Lac once had the Pope Boat Company, a well-known boat-building plant for a few years from 1906 to the First World War, about in 1917. It was located out in a marshy place that can be located now as 50 feet east of Main Street and about 100 feet south of Harborview Drive, or out in the marsh that used to be about 200 feet south of where the old Sioux Line steam locomotive is today. Now today, let me turn the clock back and take you on a trip to the plant. First, find the old Northwestern Railroad tracks that cross Main Street about 250 feet south of Harborview Drive and are buried under the asphalt pavement. Yes, there they are, showing along the cracked pavement as we look east over Main Street. Those tracks carried 2 passenger trains each way to and from Sheboygan. Now let's walk east about a block today and turn around on that old right-of-way to look back this way, west, to see where we are today. See the high-tension line tower over to the north and the old stone buildings about 50 feet north of the railroad right-of-way? That building contains stone that made up the steam house that made the steam that made the bending of the wood possible. Now standing right here today, facing west, let's go back to 1909 or 10. Here we are looking at the old Pope Company buildings in the marsh. A railroad siding runs close to the big south door so the completed boats could be shipped by rail to all parts of the country. And off to the north of the buildings, to the right, not visible, is the basin where boats are launched into the water. Now come with me through that big open door on the south to see what was going on inside. I used to run away from home to watch the men steam bend the wood for the boat's ribs, and marveled how the men could bend the pieces of oak and ash in circles after steaming them. I loved the smell of cedar and oak and all the other woods mixed together. It was wonderful how the varnish made the mahogany so beautifully red and the spruce so golden yellow. The inside of the building looked so big to me as a little boy, about 8 or 9 then, and I dreamed that I would work there someday. Now let's walk north to the other end inside the building and go out that big north door that overlooks the north basin where they launched the boats for local people. Oh, there is Dolly Pope out in the basin in one of the hunting skiffs they make. She's out at the plant quite often. We're looking north-northwest and can see the big stone Vulcan plant through the trees at the left. The basin ended up there about 100 feet away at the boathouse and the posts and bulkheads up there. The outlet to the lake is at the right out a long lagoon and out the main channel under the bridge to the lake. That is the way it was back about 1909 and 10. And now today, over 80 years later, let us see what this place looks like standing in the same place and facing the same way, looking out the big door at the north. Here we are now just east of Main Street. The basin is all filled in now, and Harborview Drive goes right over the middle of that big basin of water where Dolly Pope sat in the duck boat so many years ago. I know I am right because I used to spend hours there when a boy, and I knew about every foot of land there. Let's go back to look at Dolly Pope again. See the stone building of the Vulcan plant over at the left of the picture? The end of the inlet and basin is up to the north there, where the wooden bulkhead is with its post and the boathouse. We are looking north-northwest. Now today, let us walk north up to that northern end of the bulkhead and turn south to look back here where we are standing in the open door. Here we are looking southeast today in 1992 where the factory was. The electric high line tower stands about where the center of the main building used to be. The water here is what is left of the big basin. The old steam locomotive is about 50 to 60 feet in back of us to the north. Now standing right here, facing the same way on the north end of the big old basin, let me take you back to a day in 1924. When I took this picture, the old Pope Company buildings had been torn down then, except the stone blockhouse where the furnace was that made the steam for the bending of the wood. There were only about half the houses then on Scott Street that there are now. And there is the old rainbow we kids had so much fun on, sinking over there right where they launched the boats out the big front door of Pope's plant. That place looked lonesome during those years. They were dumping trash and everywhere, destroying the marsh. But the memory of the old Pope Boat Building Company still lives on when looking at pictures of the beautiful 52-foot Queen of the Lake they built and launched in July 1906 for Henry Boyle. Henry Boyle made the yeast foam that our mothers used to make the bread rise. And the beautiful standard 32-foot launch they built for Chubb Zimmerman in 1914. The first engineer on the old steam locomotives in back of us. That launch was complete with a 4-cylinder, 4-cycle engine, leather cushions, topped with side curtains, brass rails and lights, pointer, anchor, complete, $500, about 80 years ago. Now that we have seen the changes in the park through the last 80 or more years, let's just take a leisurely stroll through it and make believe we are back in yesterday just for a short day's visit. Here on June 11th,